apologize, there's gonna be a little break in the video. I'd gotten a phone call, had to do some adulting. It's a huge waste of time, and then the GoPro ended up dying. While the GoPro was dead, I decided to just loosen all the bolts. I literally loosened everything except the very top bell housing bolts, because it's hard to get to them with the transmission up on the transmission crossmember. So once I lower that down, I can get those out. I can just start removing assemblies now. This next section should really be helpful for people if they're going to remove the fuel tank to get to the fuel pump or something. Where I had left off, I think we were doing the exhaust manifold bolts. So I have those loose, so the exhaust is hanging there. I don't think I can get it out without taking the transmission crossmember off. So first, I'm going to take the fuel tank off, and then go ahead and support the transmission, remove the transmission crossmember. Then I can get the exhaust out, the wide pipe and the cats down and out of the way. Then we can work on getting the transmission out. So from here, honestly, is the exciting part, the fun part. And since I just did it not too long ago, I feel like I'm kind of a pro at it now, sadly, reluctantly. But let's begin removing the fuel tank. This is kind of the first step of removing the fuel tank, is disconnect all the fuel lines. This is the transmission crossmember. We're looking towards the back of the Jeep. And this is the top of the front of the fuel tank. There's only 2 lines here you need to worry about, and they're super easy to remove. They just have these little ears on them, but you squeeze them, and fuel will come out if I remember correctly. Sorry, 2 hands. But to show you, you just squeeze right here on these little ears right here, and then you pull away. But I think I need 2 hands, one to hold this side and one to pull. And the same thing on this fuel line here. Just squeeze here. Yeah, this is definitely requires 2 hands. Yeah, so it's gonna leak gas. All right, it stopped. There wasn't a lot in there. Sweet. So nothing came out of the other fuel line. They're not gonna be in the way because the fuel tank goes backwards towards the back of the Jeep and then down. So those are fine where they're at. All right, now moving to the back of the tank. The important stuff to disconnect before you start lowering it is gonna be the fuel neck filler hose here. This is the top of the back of the tank. Here's the rear axle. So we're gonna loosen this, and when we lower the tank, we'll have more room to kind of slide it off. Right now it is completely loose. Then you have little vent hose. That's super easy to remove. There's a little button on top of it. You can see the white part there. You push down on that, and it opens up the hole there to let it slide off the lip of that nipple there. Really easy. And then you have the evaporative canister, evap canister line here. That's actually pretty easy to remove, but I can't seem to get my fingers under it very well. So I figured I would show you how to do it on the evap canister. But before that, I show you that. There's one line on the evap canister they need to remove, which I already have. It was really easy. See if I can show you from a different angle. It's the same type of line as the ones on the front of the tank. You just compress these little ears here on each side, and then you can pull it away. So green ears here, just compress that, pull the line away. That stays attached to the tank, and then you pull the evap canister line out. But I can't get to it, so I'm going to lower the tank a little bit first before I do that. The way to do it, to get that line off, it is really easy. You compress the end here, and it moves those ears out of the way so it can slip over this lip here on the nipple there. But like I said, I can't seem to get it on there, so we're gonna do it a little differently and lower the tank first. Now, most importantly, I want to make clear, you can go ahead and start lowering the tank a little bit, but you want to be careful and not go too low before you remove that fuel pump, the electrical connector for the fuel pump. So I'm going to lower it quite a bit because it's a really long harness. It gives you a lot of room to lower it. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to lower the tank quite a bit, and then you'll give you a better view of it. So it is up here. You can see it through the fender well. There's the fuel pump, and the body lift makes it really easy to see and get to. One more little bit of advice: I recommend backing out the bolt on the lower control arm on the passenger side, because when you go to lower the tank, it actually really gets in the way. So you can see here, looking up, this is the passenger side lower control arm, rear lower control arm, and this bolt, I have it loosened, but it sticks way out here, and that's the tank up above that black plastic. So when you go to lower it, it just catches on there, and that hung me up for a little bit last time. You can kind of see the scratches on the tank. So lower that first, back that out first as much as possible. I'm actually going to use the transmission jack right here to get this out, because it goes pretty low and it will be nice and stable. So I'd definitely recommend supporting the tank before you back the bolt out all the way. And ideally you'd like to do this with the tank empty if you have that option. If your fuel pump died, you probably don't have that option. But I made sure it was fairly empty, so should be pretty light. 8 pounds a gallon. So I mean, it adds up kind of quick, especially with the skid plate on the fuel tank itself. All right, so the transmission is supported. I'm sorry. The fuel tank is supported. I'm just gonna go ahead and undo all these little bolts here. These little bolts. They're all 18 millimeter. So I realized it might be helpful to kind of show you where the bolts are. If you're doing this for the first time, I understand it. It is helpful just to kind of see, if, you know, firsthand where everything is to make you more comfortable. But there's this bolt is gonna be right above the rear drive shaft on the inside of the fuel tank. You're gonna have another one just in front of it. You're gonna have these two on the transmission cross member. Then you're gonna have one on the side of the frame, just in front of the rear body mount. You're gonna have one more that's kind of tricky, just along the frame here, towards the back of the fuel tank. If you have a long enough extension, it's pretty easy. Basically, I'm just gonna start lowering the fuel tank. Once I get enough like room and play in that fuel neck filler hose, I can disconnect that, and then I'll be able to get to that fuel pump connector, fuel pump wiring harness on the top. So I'm just gonna start lowering it and move around those things, and I'll keep showing you as I go. Making some space up there. Now the front of the fuel tank is just resting on that transmission cross member. It's not going anywhere, but the back of the tank is going closer and closer towards the rear axle. So we're pretty far down now. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that apart. Here's a better view of that evap canister line. Doesn't really want to come off as designed by compressing here on the very front, the outside, and pulling back. Those ears are still on there, so I guess I'm gonna do my best and I guess try to pry it off gently with a screwdriver to get these ears to pass over this lip here. But it's same exact thing as the evap canister little nipple down there. So it should be relatively simple. I'm not sure why it's not cooperating, but anyways, that would be the last fuel line, and then the wiring harness just over there. But we'll get that when the fuel pump comes down, or when the fuel tank comes down a little bit more. These little ears here is what I'm talking about. You just have to get these over that little lip. So top and bottom, and then it will pull right off. This comes completely off. This is just that evap hose, evap canister hose. I would just set that to the side somewhere safe. That looks safe. Those are the only fuel lines you need to worry about removing in the back. Now I'm just gonna continue lowering it. Okay, and that's the point where I think you wanna disconnect that fuel pump wiring harness. This is the fuel pump wiring harness. Now there's a lot of slack here in this harness, but it's just better to remove it and play it safe rather than wait too long and stretch it out and break something. So it has this red lock on it that you need to slide. Alright, so after you disengage that little red lock, you can just compress the button in the back, push down, and pull away. Loop it out of the way somewhere safe and easy to get to when you put the fuel tank back in. Officially, I think that means everything is disconnected up here. There's really not much, and I was honestly relieved to learn that this thing's pretty easy to work on compared to other vehicles. Now we can just get on with lowering it. As you can see, the front of the tank is kind of hung up on that transmission crossmember, so we have to come way down in the back first in order to slide it back and get it off of that crossmember. Every once in a while, I just kind of jiggle it around and make sure it's not catching on anything. Helping it stay a little forward too is helpful because it just kind of wants to get caught on the rear diff. So I'm kind of pulling it forward just to clear all that. So we're almost cleared the diff. I just want to check one last time that there's nothing still connected. Okay, there's the fuel neck filler, and the top of the fuel tank is past the axle. Just go ahead and let it kind of slide back. This is kind of another reason why I was saying you want to lift the Jeep up as high as you can. Alright, so this is where it gets fun. But man, I don't want to be doing this. I want to be installing those. I actually have one more to assemble. They're B-locks, so I don't want to be doing this. I wanted to be freaking installing cool stuff, not redoing what I was doing. That's what made me do this video, honestly, because if this can help anyone else, I'd be glad to help. With the fuel tank out, there's like a plethora of room now. There's so much room, so we can get to pretty much all around the transmission and transfer case now. But first, what I'm gonna do is the jack is just holding up the exhaust while I was trying to undo the bolt. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna move that floor jack under the transfer case on this little flat spot here. That's kind of the safest place to put it, right in the middle of the jack cup. I'm gonna support that. Then I'm gonna go ahead and take this transmission crossmember off, which I already have everything loose. These are all 18mm nuts and bolts. And then under here, to get the transmission mount off, disconnected from the transmission crossmember, you just want to use a 16mm, and there's nuts right on the inside of the transmission crossmember. Just 3 of those for the transmission mount itself. I would remove those first. Then you can support it from the transfer case. Take the weight off of the transmission crossmember. Take the nuts and bolts out, and then you can go ahead and either just pull it out with your hands, or you can start lowering the transmission a little bit until this pops out. Just make sure the jack is secure under here. If it does pop a little bit, I wouldn't lower the jack all the way to the ground and wait for it to pop out, and then once it does, the transmission's just hanging off the back of the engine, and the back of the block is into the firewall. So that'd be a no. So let me try and show you guys the right and safe way to do this. So the best way to support the transfer case is from the back. That way you can get the transmission jack under the transmission later instead of having to move things around. So to give you a quick look close up, I'm just trying to get it centered under here, under this flat spot on the transfer case. I think this is a safe spot. So we're kind of centered right there. Even though we're using pieces of wood, the floor's nice and smooth, so it shouldn't slide or anything. The jack should slide when I'm raising and lowering it. I'm just gonna lift the transfer case just a little bit, and that should lift the transmission just enough to take the load off this transmission crossmember. I saw the transmission mount lifted up a little bit, so that should mean there's no more weight on this crossmember. I have all the bolts loose and free, so I'm just gonna pull those out now. If they weren't loose, you could try hitting up here with a hammer or something, but everything's loose now. So I'm gonna go ahead and take all these out, and the transmission is supported by the transfer case, so it should be safe. It's loose. All right, it's already loose, but I'm just gonna let the transfer case down a little bit. You know what wouldn't hurt is to maybe have one of the transmission mount bolts left in there, just for when this falls down. So when this does come loose, it's not just gonna fall. Instead of waiting for the weight of the transmission to pop this thing out, I'm just going to get a screwdriver, or sorry, I'm just gonna get a hammer and pry the crossmember out right here. That's what I did before, and it worked really well. So this is a pretty long, flat, framing hammer. So it's perfect for this. Or I'm not even prying that hard, just trying to gently pry it out. And now it's just hanging there. Sweet. A little safer than trying to wait for the whole weight of the transmission to pop it out. Alright, crossover is completely clear of everything. I'm going to go ahead and take those transmission mount nuts off now and then get rid of that crossmember. This thing's not super heavy, but it would suck if you dropped on your face. Transmission crossmember is out and exhaust is ready to come out. I just wanted to show you real quick. I was able to take off the wide pipe and separate it from the, I don't know if you'd call that a cat back or mid pipe, whatever. But I was able to separate it without having to remove that because it has 2 exhaust hangers. I really didn't want to mess with those. If you're doing this by yourself, I wanted to show you kind of how I'm doing it, especially doing it during the quarantine. Don't really have anyone else to help you. I'm supporting the exhaust with the transmission jack. So I have the passenger side still bolted in very loosely. The driver's side is completely off, so completely separated from the manifold. I'll get up there and show you before I take it off. But it's also supported back here by this transmission crossmember mount. So just kind of wanted to show you how I'm doing it by myself. If you have to do it by yourself, this is kind of an easy way to, no, it's not easy, but it makes it a little easier. Taking the exhaust out in this is just a pain, especially if you're doing it by yourself. So real quick, let me show you how I'm doing it. So I got the driver's side completely separated. You can see it's loose and the bolts are out. The passenger side is still bolted in. I'm gonna go ahead and take that last nut off. I need 2 hands to do that, but that's how I'm doing it. Should be called solo transmission. I just want to get this transmission out so bad so I can hurry up and figure out where the heck it is leaking from. The suspense is killing me. So there's some light. I hope that helps. I think I can get that bolt from down here while I'm supporting it. Alright, last exhaust bolt is out, and yeah, the rest of this is kind of just an awkward fight to get it down, so I'm gonna have my helper here out of the way. I guess any jack would work if you have a floor jack or something, or even a tall jack stand, or a 2x4 cut exactly the length to hold it, but that's just what I used. So can't really go forward, can't really go backwards. So I'm gonna go up, and then I'm gonna try to let the see if I can show you. Let the end of the wide pipe down underneath this mount. It's kind of on top of it, so I need to get it over and down, and then I can get this thing slid back and out. There we go. Be careful the O2 sensors on here. Don't snag those on anything or break the wires, they're expensive.